branches and twigs.
Crazy.
Oh,
I've got to rake my whole yard.
I mean, I have huge old trees
Yeah.
around my whole.
Okay.
Just,
I got a bunch of,
uh,
I got to rake the whole yard. Every inch.
I have 5 down.
Who
4
doesn't
and a
have
half
the
of them
agenda
taken care
yet?
of. Weekend.
Yeah.
That's one giant oak that I was just like, I'm done for today.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March 18th, 2026 Finance Committee meeting. As is the case, this is a hybrid meeting, so roll call votes will be required, and this meeting will be recorded to assist in the preparation of minutes. Our first order of business then is to confirm quorum. Thanks, George. Alyssa,
Here.
Nate,
Here,
John,
here,
Bob,
Here.
George. Hold on one second. George Perkins.
George.
George, unmute yourself.
Here.
And I am here as well. Raphael is expected to join us shortly as well, but we do have quorum. We want to know if there is any public comment. We do have a member of the public joining us tonight, Linda Callahan. Linda, would you like to say anything in advance? Okay.
thank you.
No transfers pending. So we're going to move right to our remaining requirements for the 2026 annual town meeting warrant articles. Article number 1, which is the budget adjustment for snow and ice. I just asked Jennifer if the numbers have been finalized. They have not, so we will have to vote that on town floor. Okay? Article number 8, which is next up, is the DY Regional School District budget and override. We are very fortunate tonight to have both Dr. Smith and Dr. Gilson with us. I did try to compile as many of your questions as I could, and I did send that out as the attachment. So again, from a big picture perspective, again, as I noted at the beginning of my public comments at the March 9th school committee meeting where they voted the budget, I really applaud Dr. Smith and Dr. Gilson and the entire leadership team for the hard work that they put into this. And specifically their commitment to improving and following their strategic plan to improve the performance of the students. I mean, it's really, if you look at their budget, is so much about student performance and improving the equity around making sure that all students have the great opportunities. Secondly, as it relates to their transparency and openness, again, none of the analyses that we have been able to compile separately would not have been possible without the district providing the annual town reports, audit statements, and quarterly and the data on all of their budgets in a format that allowed us to compile those and recompile those in different formats. So we very much appreciate all of that. The third thing was our commitment to focus on non-classroom, non-education items, line items. The objective here is not to ask a lot of detailed questions around the business of the education, but to seek understanding of some of the, and we call them the 3Bs, 2Ps, buses, building utilities, benefits, and specifically the paras and the positions. Subsequent to that, we also added the certified cash and E&D. If I'd suggest that perhaps we start with the first item that we had in the agenda, unless there are other questions. Does anybody want to handle the questions, or would you just like me to sort of continue the monologue?
Go for it.
Okay. First up, and all of you should have gotten it. It's about regular day transportation, not special ed transportation, regular day. And this is the big buses that go around town, for the 5-star buses. And as part of the annual or the year-end reports, they reported actual expenditures for FY 23, 24, and 25 at about 2.6, 2.7, and 2.8. The budget for FY 26 was significantly higher, and obviously off of that higher budget was the current forecast. I did run the analysis of what the 2.5, because it was supposedly indexed at a 5% rate. And so one of the lines in the middle of the page shows what the difference would be between a 5% increase and what's in the budgets. The bottom of the page focuses in on the line items that support the regular day. So for the statistical thing that I use is program 1, code 40, I think is what it was. So I'd like to sort of perhaps turn it back over to you guys and thoughts, comments, observations.
Yeah, so before, because a lot of these questions are going to fall into the same bigger explanation. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of a commentary, which is school budget reporting is different than municipal reporting. Like, we have to report higher level of detail to report to the Department of Education than the towns have to report their municipal level funding, right? So that's why our line codes are how many ever digits, 12 digits longer. And so we have 1,200 minimum 1,200 different lines in our budget. And so when you get our detailed report versus a very beautiful budget book that the town puts together, but just the level of detail that is in our budget isn't is much more detailed than what you get in the town budget book because of what we're required to report. And we have no problem. We'll share all that level of transparency. And the flip side is they want to be careful in the way that is scrutinized, because part of it is reporting. And if you don't zoom out in the same way you would zoom out to look at a town's budget, you run into danger of not seeing the bigger picture, getting lost in the trees for the forest, or losing the forest for the trees.
Losing the forest.
Yeah, losing the forest for the trees. So here's an example where, yes, you might look at general ed transportation and see places where it looks like there's a savings. But currently, we're running a deficit in transportation as a whole. When you zoom out, and we've shared this information with the chair, but if you look out at all of our transportation lines, currently, right now, as of today, we are running a transportation deficit, because you can't just look at general ed transportation. You have to look at special education transportation. You have to look at McKinney-Vento transportation. You have to zoom out and look at all of our transportation costs. And when you run all of our transportation costs, we are currently running a deficit. And so that is sorry, that's the wrong sheet. I think, anyways, but it was sent on a separate one. I don't have that one with me. But so and this tends to be a common theme here, because we provide all this level of detail. Yeah, sure, you can zoom in and grab a section of our budget and find savings in a section. But if you don't compare it to the deficits in the other places, then you see what looks like a savings isn't balanced against an area where we're running a deficit.
Right.
And we've showed those cost escalators. We've shown the cost that it takes to run out of district transportation. We've shown the McKinney-Vento, we're running a $700,000 deficit in McKinney-Vento transportation. That wipes out nearly all of this 800,000 savings right here.
No, okay, so that is, yeah, and you know what? I absolutely agree with that. So if you look, and I think this is an important commentary. So if you look at the Q3 26 data, you start to see that. In other words, if you compare the budget for FY '26, Dr. Smith makes a really important point. In FY '26, the transportation budget looks like it's going to be overspent in total. So the question, though, is what some of that was fixed in the FY '27 numbers. So if you recall like specifically on the McKinney-Vento line, it was put up from 190 to 806. So I don't think the budget is sort of the budget for this year. The question is carrying that forward. When adjustments have been made to the special ed lines, should not there be a corresponding change in the regular ed line?
Well, the regular day transportation is where we carry. Like we haven't made a necessary, I'm not sure we've made we've level funded the special education transportation. We didn't make a giant jump in our special education transportation costs.
Right. And I think looking at the whole budget in perspective, we zoomed in on transportation, but step out, and what we chose to do with special ed is we have level funded special education costs and really looking to work with our total budget as a whole to balance everything else. Okay, so we have set all of the schools and we have level funded that. We've level funded special education in the effort to keep costs down. So while you're looking at specific lines, it can get dangerous because you can't, we have several unanticipated expenses that could come up, but we're trying to work with everything.
Like right now, special ed is 1.8 million in deficit today because special education is a completely unpredictable cost for us.
Right.
Say it again, doctor, how much?
1.8 million.
1.8 million.
Yeah. So sure, we can cut $800,000 out of here and then.
But you have to add it on the other side. That's why. That's a little bit. So this.
There's another cost and there's a question in here about circuit breaker, right? So we spend next year's circuit breaker. We spend this year's circuit breaker in next year, right? So we've already got our certified number, 1.95 million. Right. We've applied 1.8. That leaves us a cushion of $150,000. That is less than one move in. One kid moves in that we don't currently have that needs an out of district placement. That extra $150,000 is
completely
gone. See you later.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how we end up with these problems. And tuition rates, I have a meeting April 17th with Evergreen. Evergreen is talking about increased tuition rates. And I can tell you, they invite us to this meeting.
Yeah, with the answer already
in place, that the tuition rates are going up. So all of these unanticipated costs come, and I've seen the budget analysis of us compared to Cape Tech and us compared to Charter. Neither one of them, they have the luxury of if a kid doesn't work out, they come back to us. If a kid doesn't work out with us, we still have to educate them.
Yeah, we own that.
And we have to educate them either in our district or out of district or homeschool tutoring or whatever. And all that cost sits with us. And all of that is unanticipated. And all of that, we have to figure out how to make it work. And when you run the per pupil numbers, we're still less expensive than both of them. Because if you take out the reimbursement, which I saw what you did with your numbers, if you take out the reimbursement rate, the per pupil cost of Charter is more expensive than per pupil at DY. And they don't have a union. They don't have transportation. Their special education numbers are less than us. Their EL numbers are less than us. And the same as for Cape Tech. So this, and our budget increase is less than almost every other district on the Cape. And I'm having a hard time continuing to defend this budget number when we've brought in a budget that is almost the exact same budget percentage increase as the town. And I'm cutting 13 positions to make this budget number work. And again, I can tell you right now, Falmouth, 5.8% budget increase, Mashpee 5.3% budget increase, P-Town 5.98% budget increase, Sandwich 2.6, great. Cape Cod Tech 5.41, 4.51, Barnstable 2.9 because they're using $3.5 million out of their reserve account to make that work. Monomoy 5.06 and the collaborative 5%. Other than one other district, everybody else is bigger than us.
Correct. So I get back to the question of the question specifically on the regular day do the numbers, again, this is the question of smoothing. Is the budget that's represented at 3.7 an accurate representation of the costs that you're going to be incurring?
We're currently running a deficit. So yes.
A deficit in transportation as a whole, but not in regular day.
So our regular day, right now, we might be running a surplus in regular day transportation. But if I cut it, then we're going to be in a bigger deficit because transportation as a whole is running a deficit. So next year, those costs are not going to be cheaper.
So would it be more appropriate though, I guess, or from a, to.
So can we can we move stuff
Yes.
around? But that's not the purpose here is for us to move, this shouldn't be a conversation about moving the
Okay.
account lines around. Like we can have that conversation at a different time and we're trying to work on our accounting, but I've had 3 business managers in 2 years and I've no longer have an accountant. I have to find a new accountant. Like we're trying to do our best to keep up here, but if we're going to get into the nitty gritty on whether all my account lines are something that everybody wants to be able to keep track of, I am running, quite frankly, a little bit out of patience. We're doing our best here to keep up, but the overall number, I don't know how many else to say it. Like transportation is running a deficit. I've showed you
Right.
it's running a deficit.
For this year, yes.
Yes. So next year, those costs are gonna go up, and our budget reflects that it's gonna go up.
And that's excuse me, that's almost uncontrollable, right? Those costs that increase next year for transportation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just reality, right? Just the cost of fuel is gonna be.
The fuel is gonna be most.
This-
Anybody drive by Shell in the last 3 days? Watch the prices of gas go from $2.99 to $3.54.
Yeah.
It's going to have a big impact on all of us, including our town.
The specific number for regular day transportation came right out of the signed bus
So
contract.
that is the 3.7.
That is the 3, right off the contract, their fees for each year of the bus contract.
Okay.
And they are calculated. And what I noticed was that last year, the amount rose by the rate that we were giving. What was put into the budget was like $150,000 higher than the total number.
Mhm.
And that I used the number that was in there for the 3rd year cost, which is this coming year.
Right.
And I rose it by 150,000.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Jennifer.
I'm just gonna make a general statement. Tell me if you agree or not. When I've been a town accountant for over 30 years. So what you're asking for is a little bit of flexibility in your budget. When you get into the line items, and especially as you stated, you've been through 3 business managers in the last 3 years, it takes some time to figure out, okay, we're charging this line item, maybe we should be charging that line item, right? And like with transportation, you're looking at as a whole, which you should be. And those individual line items where they might not completely line up, it gets moved around within transportation. And especially where in special education, as we all know, you could have someone move into your district and then it can blow that out in just one move. So really what you're saying is with the individual line items, you're just asking, like your overall budget went up 4.3%. So you're asking for the flexibility. And then as you go down the line, you might be switching some things here and there when you do your budget. You're reporting to DESI, you report you know, everything that goes in there, but it is kind of hard. Like when I've gone into communities and I'll say, okay, well, they're paying this out of this, maybe they should be paying it out of that. It happens in every community. And it just takes a little time to really get, you know, up to speed and have some longevity there and do that instead of like nitpicking the line items.
Yeah.
When we present our budget, we present the individual line items that we have to do like a Schedule A. So we present that and it's in our budget book. But, you know, we're always, you know, we can move stuff around. We have to, it's a little bit of an arduous process with us. We have to
Yeah.
have a finance committee vote and then the select board vote. But you guys have line item autonomy. And so with that, it makes it just a little bit, it takes a little bit more time to really get up to speed. And so I'm just, you know, because I understand where you're coming from because I've been there, you know, in order to manage a budget, you need to have flexibility. If you budget to the penny on every single thing, you won't have flexibility. And that makes it a little bit much more difficult.
And
You
we've,
want us to look at the bigger picture.
yeah, and we've had, like, so there's a question in here about like a non-expense for like sub-separate mass collaborative tuition. Now, we didn't have the chance to track it all the way back. We didn't have enough time. But if I had to guess, based upon what I know happened at the end of fiscal year 25, is David leaving,
John coming in.
working 3 days a week, then our assistant treasurer leaving, John also taking on the role of treasurer, and that money getting charged to the wrong line. I could probably find out where it went,
It just went someplace.
but it went someplace else, right? So it got charged to the wrong place. Somebody, accounts payable, or more likely we also had a new one of our administrative assistants who puts in the POs for all of our special education, our students who are outplaced, and all of our transportation associated with that, was still learning the process. So my guess is she was not charging the right account line and nobody caught it. And so it's charged somewhere, but it would take us a little while to go back and figure out where.
And it's not necessarily worth it now.
No,
Just-
but yeah, it's not that we didn't spend any money. My guess is maybe it's up in one of these other lines that are our special education, or it got charged potentially to a grant. I don't know, because we also have
Forgot-
240, or we
did it as an
prepaid.
offset.
Yeah, or we prepaid tuition, which is possible, because then you also have this question about where did because the 2.434 million, I believe that was a year we got extraordinary relief the year before. So I don't know if people know what extraordinary relief is. There's circuit breaker, and then a year when you have really, really high special education costs, you can get what's called extraordinary relief. So on top of your circuit breaker, you can get an additional level of circuit breaker relief called extraordinary relief. It's like for like really, really high costs, like you get a really, really expensive out of district replacement. A student gets placed in like a residential placement that's like $450,000. You can get what's called extraordinary relief, a higher level rate reimbursement, but you get it one time. And then the next year you don't get that same level. So that's why you can see a bump in 1 year. And sometimes too, it's like the governor will have, like when the state was running a surplus the last couple of years, they will have some additional money that they'll give towards certain places. One of those places will oftentimes be circuit breaker reimbursement. So and that'll come at the end of a year, right? So, you know, we know our number now. I don't anticipate it's going to happen this year because the state's fiscal picture is not as good as it's been in previous years. But let's just, for argument's sake, let's say the state found a whole bunch of money at the end of this year. They might put out a supplemental package at the end of the year that would say, you know, they're going to bump the reimbursement rate to 80%. So every if we were a municipality, but in this case, we'd get an additional 5% on our reimbursement. So at the end of the year, we'd get whatever that delta was, you know, another $20,000, whatever it is. And oftentimes what we'll do is then we'll prepay tuitions, right? Because you can prepay out of district tuition with that money. So in that year, it's another possibility is we prepaid
Some dollars.
tuitions to there. Again, I don't know. We'd have to track it back and we didn't have time to look. But that's all getting back to your larger point, which is having line item flexibility.
Yeah, and I just want to mention in the, you know, in the municipalities that I've worked in with the school districts, we've had regional school districts, but we've had school districts that's K through 12. They go through our general ledger. The account numbers are long, it's all DESI. I get it. And you know, when you do have the money in your budget, a lot of times they do prepay. It kind of might relieve a little bit for next year, not knowing what might come in, but it's a normal practice to prepay your special education. And they do let you do that. And there's caps on circuit breaker. I mean, you know, you have to spend, you can't spend more than what you got the year before. And if you spend less, it goes back. You have to kind of give it back. I don't know what the regional
Yeah.
does, but they do have, you know, really strict caps on that and the way you report your circuit breaker. But, you know, all that is just normal part of the budgeting process. And it's usually, I think the business manager makes those decisions. It's like, oh, okay, this is what we're looking at next year. This is what we have. We have a little bit. So let's prepay. So I'm not like, not sleeping at night next year, trying to figure out how to pay this because we have a little bit. And those are all decisions that a business manager makes. And, you know, and sometimes it's, you know, it's like, I understand my finance director brain what I'm doing, but it's not all of us, you know, written down everywhere.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to like, just let you know, I understand, you know, what you're doing. I didn't look at the individual line items. I had, you know, I look more at the assessment and, you know, that calculation, so.
Mr. Gutierrez, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. How long has the school district been without an accountant?
Since like early February.
Yeah, about a month and a half.
Yeah.
We have somebody doing we brought back somebody who retired from that position who's been doing some part-time work for us, but
And
about
it's helping to stay
afloat.
like afloat
Had a-
rather than sink.
Yeah.
Do you know of anybody?
That's kind of what I'm poking at here because that's not having a dedicated accounting resource is unacceptable, and that's not. You shouldn't bear the brunt of that vacancy. Also, did I hear that you don't have a business manager?
No, that's not true. She's
No.
sitting to my right. Yeah.
Okay, that's so.
But, yeah,
I thought
between so last or this about February last year, that person, the person who was in the role, left for another opportunity. I had an interim who worked like 3 days a week, but then at the same time, our assistant treasurer left. We transitioned. The districts had like the treasurer role by function can sit with the school committee in a region, like it can be a school committee position. I didn't like that organization structure because it was really more like a ceremonial position, quite frankly. So I talked with the school committee. The school committee agreed to transition to a treasurer, like a true treasurer function. Most
Okay.
regional school districts where I worked in, it's been a part-time position where the treasurer has a finance background, and you separate the duties as they should be. Treasurer separate from your finance and operations director. But in the interim, we had to set up a system where the actual treasurer on the school committee was doing the treasury functions, which they'd never done before. So we limped through the last couple of months of last school year where my interim part-time person was doing essentially both functions with oversight on the school from the school committee member. So we really limped through the end of last school year until I was able to hire Dr. Gilson and then move actually that interim person into the treasury function. And that's how we've been operating since July. And as you might imagine, then there was a lot of catch up and backlog we've been doing since then.
What's your no shit assessment on when the volatility will be able to get past the volatility and your new team will be able to start scrubbing this very complex accounting system and get and potentially hire a dedicated accountant?
So to a lot of credit to Dr. Gilson, we've already done a ton of work. So we're already much further along than we were last year.
Okay.
And we'll continue on that. Definitely not having the accountant slowed things down, but a lot of work was getting done before she left us just a month and a half ago. So we'll be slowed down and hampered a little bit, but we are going to continue to move forward. And we have a couple of other things in place, which are about modernizing current systems. We've been doing a lot of training with our like software system that we use, like
Mhm.
getting a lot of people up to, and then like just had a meeting with our HR director about like payroll rollover. Like we learned part of it was, some mistakes that were made last year have been corrected, so that's not going to happen again. So we learned a lot of lessons going through all this last year. So
Right.
a lot of stuff is moving forward, despite some of the staffing challenges we've had.
Sure. I do want to get back to a comment you made about Barnstable and what was it, their 2.7% increase, but they mitigated it with your term was the reserve fund. Can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all just a comment that I got from that superintendent. She said that they're offsetting it. And I'd have to get more information, but I know that they're using 3.5 million from their town reserves or they must have some type of a savings, similar to free cash or similar to, they don't have E&D, so I don't know how
Right.
they set some type of stabilization reserve account. I'd have to ask her more details. I sent out a survey, so I just grabbed that information right before coming over here. But they have some type of, equivalent to some type of a savings account that they dipped into in order to make this work for next year.
That's very interesting. Jennifer or Richard, have you ever heard of a town using a savings fund, reserve fund, free cash to help out the school?
I'm not an expert in town. Jennifer is.
Yeah, it's really, in general, just from a financial policy standpoint, it's not good financial policy to use one-time revenue to cover reoccurring expenses. So you always want to try to make sure that your reoccurring expenses are covered by reoccurring revenue. I will say that it really is different. It's really hard to compare budgets and like operations of towns that are really part of the municipality. Like Barnstable has a K through 12, like all their expenses go through their general ledger. And actually Barnstable had special legislation years ago where they combined their finance departments. And I know the finance director over there, and he, so there's some reason that they're doing this, and I'm sure he has a plan so they wouldn't have to do it again. So the process, with the budget is usually a lot different because everybody has like a seat at the table. We have an assessment, we have a regional agreement, and part of that, is why our increase goes up the way it does. It's because it's part of the regional agreement, and so, like keep that in mind. When you're thinking about this, you can't compare Dennis Yarmouth process to the same process that you have in Barnstable, Falmouth, and Sandwich. It's just different.
Okay, so I totally respect that and understand that. So in the summary Richard put together, there are some. So that's good. That's educational for me. Do not use free cash for reoccurring expenses. So there are a handful, maybe 10 items in the summary Richard put together that are not reoccurring. In theory, could those be offset with free cash or some other funding? For example, the Mason repairs, security updates. Let me switch screens on you here so I can.
Could you hold that question for a little bit? Could you hold that question for a little bit?
Absolutely, because I can sense their frustration because honestly, after differential equations and applied mathematics, I can't figure out their system. That's why I have to phone friends and ask for help. Okay.
Yeah. So John,
Just a curiosity question. So that 3.5 for Barnstable, is that coming from a school?
I can find out, but I don't know. I'd have to ask.
Jennifer,
Or
Let me-
like the town, I'd be under the impression and maybe I'm wrong, but we could not take $1.4 million out of free cash and send it to the school. Is that?
Right. I mean, so like I said, policy, one-time revenue but I know Barnstable has a combined finance department. So their school and their town are combined. They have one finance department. So they probably, you can say that they have the one-time revenue, but they might have, a plan to not use that next year. You know, you just don't know. It's like, there's always a story behind the numbers. You can't just
I'm just
really,
curious.
yeah, no, you can't just really like look at a number and say, okay, this isn't right. There's always a story behind them. And so with them, you know, again, I don't know what they're doing but it is one budget. I don't know. But you know, Mark Milne's been over there for like
Oh.
30 years and they have very good financial reporting. So I'm sure there's a good reason of what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Well,
I mean-
that's why I'm pushing this box, this envelope a little bit here, because if they're doing something creative or unusual respective to what we're doing, but we can do something similar within the bounds of regulation, laws, etc. Then let's poke at it and see what we can do, because I sense I think we're all frustrated with the system, the situation, the minutia, and the regulatory shackles that are around the school district's budget. But hey, somebody did something creative up the street. Let's see if there's some form or some derivative of that we can apply here.
I'm just gonna say, like I said, the process here is very different than Barnstable Sandwich and Mashpee. We don't have a K through 12. We have a regional agreement that we adhere to. The town, it's not good financial practice. I don't know what the story is behind Barnstable, but I'm sure there's some plan of what they did. I think Mark's point was he just wanted to let you know everybody's budget is going up over 4% and 5% and probably 6 and 7%. That's just, the increase in cost that we're looking at. But I know the town would not be in favor of putting one-time revenue to a reoccurring expense unless something devastating happened and we don't want to decimate, departments. So, but I don't think we need to like go down that road. And I think we're getting off track. I was just giving a little
Like I said,
context.
again,
to
all
what
we're doing is
Mark's
at this point seeking understanding and moving, because again, this is how the objective here is to help the committee have an informed vote tonight. So the only other on that same, so the similar if we go to page 2, which is the building utilities. So again, which is sort of very specific lines. The issue there was sort of data consistency. And so so any of the inconsistencies are probably just due to accounting types of.
So first question is, what we weren't sure about is data inconsistency between this and this?
Internal to this as well. So if you sort of look, so for example, if you look at this natural gas heating specifically, again, the projection was that the cost is going to go up, but the FY25 actuals in Building 40, which is the Ezra Baker, went down from 25 to 27. Station Avenue went down. So it's just sort of internal consistency. And again, it just could be due to, the complexity of the system.
Yeah. So this was something that was put together
By somebody else.
by somebody else as a pitch, right? So this is not us. This is, again, somebody else coming to give us a sales pitch on a potential product for us. So this shouldn't hold too much weight. This, again, we look at the big number. Are there some lines that are over and some lines that are under, like some lines that are overfunded, or meaning like we didn't expend the total amount that was budgeted? Yes. And then are there other lines that we over expended? Yes. So I had Susan run FY25, and FY25 we expended 90% of the natural gas, like what we had budgeted, 90 total and all the lines that are for natural gas, and it left us $50,000 in unexpended funds. If winter had been this winter,
You would have gone over.
we'd have gone well over, right? So to Jennifer's earlier point, like we need some level of flexibility for situations like this winter. And so I do, and then, you know, the increases have been based upon, I think we had this conversation the last time we were here about everything that we're both seeing and being told on what the rates are going to increase. I mean, anybody who's been read a newspaper in the last, I don't know, however long, I can't go 3 days without reading a story about, you know, how utility rates are crushing everybody, and we're in the same boat. So we're, you know, we based our, and I mean, David would have to come back here and tell you what his logic was for last year's, but we're basing our increases and on, you know, last year's was an 8.1. I ran the totals for natural gas and electricity, and that was an 8.1% increase on what was actual to what was budgeted, on what we actually spent to what was budgeted as an increase. And then Dr. Gilson already said she talked to MASBO, and everybody in MASBO is using a 13% increase for next year.
Any other committee questions on that particular page?
And it's on the sum total. And yes, could we straighten some of these lines out?
And I won't tell you who asked the question about, are all the lights converted to LEDs?
I don't know. I'd have to.
No, because I just received a request from Steve Foucher today to sign a contract which provides it's for the high school, and they're gonna do a conversion to LED. So not all lights are converted yet,
Yes.
but that is a contract that will be a free conversion
Right.
to us because the implementation of the total is less than 300,000.
We have a particular energies centric person who loves to ask those types of questions.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
No, so, right.
Richard, can I just ask a general question?
Sure.
So you said special ed's over 1.8 million, right? So that's like the total program.
Yeah, like all costs.
regional.
Yeah, yeah.
So, from, you know, so that money's gonna come from somewhere, right? So do you have total flexibility to move, I don't even call it moving, but
Budget transfer.
it's just, yeah.
Yes,
like-
yes, and.
Yes.
So within the lines, yes. If we're going to move function codes, then that requires school committee approval for function code
But
transfer.
you still have that, so
Yeah.
if I underspend 50,000 on natural gas, I can
Yes.
move
Yeah,
it
somewhere
towards
else.
that
Yeah.
1 point.
It's basically, the same process
Yeah.
that we go through.
So ballpark, like what did you do you know what you budgeted for this year for special ed? Like ballpark?
I don't have that number.
I'd have to look at it completely, but like for the past couple of years, we've level funded special ed and like that, you know, so level fund, but we have a lot of money moving in and out with circuit breaker as an offset. And then, you know, we have the 240 IDEA grant, which provides some money for some collaborative tuitions and other supplies and things like that. So there's a lot of money that can be moved around. And when you have 1,200 lines in the total budget, you can, you know, it's
So I know you can't read the future, but are you concerned that the budget for next year, we're gonna be running into the same thing with special ed?
Special ed is you know, it's actually interesting. I was at a meeting with this is more soapbox than anything else, but I was at a meeting with the commissioner of education, who's new. It's been about 8 months on the job. And he was saying like he identified a couple of threats that he sees to public education, and one of them he identifies as special education. Like, and not that like he doesn't believe that and I agree like, that all students need to be educated, but is that if we don't get our hands really wrapped around how to do this in a better way, better meet students' needs, and figure out sort of the cost, it's gonna bury us. And I'm wicked paraphrasing what he said because he spoke much more eloquently and much longer on the topic than I'm giving it justice right here. And you know, I have one slide in our budget presentation. It's just out of district costs alone, right? So this is not students who are coming to DY. This is just students that we send because we're not able to educate. It's creeping up to be 9 to 10% of our operating budget, right? So short answer, yes, it is a concern. You know, we're looking to try to address some of that by building some more in-district programming, and specialize some of that programming even better than we're currently doing. But even that doesn't come without a cost, right? And I was like having this conversation with my wife, who's an educator too, and like there's this like tipping point where like you have to spend more money first to like build the programs that you want in order to stop some of the outflow while still spending the other stuff, right? So it's like this delicate dance. And we're trying to float that line, or find creative ways to create the programs while like doing FTE transfers, like not necessarily spend more money, but so we're trying to float that line while, because it is, you know, I can show you, I have the graph in my budget presentation. It just grows like this year over year between the transportation and the tuition costs. It's and then, you know, some of it we're hopefully we'll get some real, you know, we need some pressure from some other places. You know, the Superintendent's Association is really rallying around. I mentioned I have this meeting in a couple of weeks for this, forget the term, I'm gonna get stuck in the wrong detail, but they have these meetings when a private special education school wants to reset the rates, right? They're allowed to increase at a certain rate, but when they want to essentially escalate the rates beyond that, they have to hold these meetings. They have to send something to the Department of Ed, and then they have to invite any of the school districts that would be affected by these rates. So like essentially you have a student who goes to one of these schools, right? But it's really just perfunctory, you know, like you just go, they give you a presentation and then you just find out the rate changed and that's it. So the Superintendent's Association is really pushing on this because it's killing school districts, about opening the process, making it more transparent. So, you know, I just sent myself and other superintendents who are finding ourselves, we're like really blasting them with like, okay, so you're going to have this, like, I want, what are the program changes? You know, what are the costs associated? What's your budget sheet? You know, requesting all this information. We're trying to put a lot of pressure from the Superintendent's Association and then put it on DESE too, to the Department of Ed to put all these, to try to enact some change because it's completely escalating out of control. You know, so that's advocacy coming from a different level that I can't do by myself. And will take some time because advocacy stuff like that, like does take some time. It'll take a couple cycles, but I'm hopeful we'll start to see some change. There's a probably a longer answer than anticipated.
Yeah,
Like I say,
it's breaking point at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
So, yeah, so on that point, if we switch to slide 3, that is the circuit breaker. So it's sort of like marrying. So there's for those who love to dig into that circuit breaker. So circuit breaker is one of the mechanisms that they use, and Dr. Smith alluded to that. So I call it's sort of like medical expenses. There's a deductible, which is your threshold, and then there's a copay. You know, you have to pay 25% of the tuition and 40% of the of the transportation. So looking ahead, though, if our expenses continue at the rate that they are, would we not expect a higher reimbursement?
So yes, and so one, they raise the threshold every year.
Right, which
So so they sort of raise it with a rate of inflation. So
plus or minus, yeah.
Plus or minus, yeah. But so the costs, so while the costs go up, so does the threshold go up. So if your costs escalate more than the threshold, then yes.
I mean, you definitely end up paying more per student that way.
Yes.
So what's happening also on the student trend then? Because that's the other thing that was a little bit unclear from.
Yeah, so this is the first year that we have more students identified for special education as a percentage than we have. Like we've always just had a flat 17. It's moved between 17 or 18% for
Right.
15 years.
Yeah, but this is the specific for the out of district
Well, there are other students who qualify. It's not just out of district,
Yeah.
you know, student who's in district who has like a one-on-one paraeducator, has certain level of related therapies, like that you can get above the threshold amount. Um,
So
so
you expect it though to remain constant, or is it going up, down, or just flat?
it's largely flat. And like I said, our strategy is to spend this year's money next year, right? So we don't, we get, like, we got FY26 circuit breaker notification early. Like we get it, like, I don't know, I'd have to go back and I was looking at the email, but I didn't look at the date, but we get it, I think, over the summer. So we have it way early in the
Right.
budgeting process. So we don't do a ton of, I guess we could start working with a special education team on projecting for circuit breaker, but the practice has been to use that information to plan forward with. Like when we get it, that's the number we use. And then we've held the last couple of years, we've held more in reserve for the unanticipated costs, but this year we got closer, you know, to the number because we were trying to keep the budget. You know, like I said, we had 1.95 was the number, and we're at 1.8 because we're really trying to keep the budget costs down. We understood the situation we were in, where last year we were at 1.6, and that was left us more of a cushion for unanticipated costs. But we are, you know, trying to be, I don't know, we're looking for places to provide relief to the budget. And this is one of the places that we provide relief, and it's not without risk.
Other questions on this one? The next one is related to E&D. And that was just a number of people, including some members of the public, got a little bit of heartburn on seeing some of the elementary school things in there. So it was really sort of, you know, I don't think the public necessarily understands how this all works. And so it's perhaps useful just to, both for our education, potentially for the public education, how does this work? Oh, sorry, Jennifer.
I just want to ask a question before you jump into this, because I think there's a misunderstanding. So I want to know if I understand it.
Yeah.
So when you get certified for E&D, you have your undesignated fund balance, which really is your general fund balance, right? Because you close everything out at the end of the year, revenue, expenditure, and then what they do is they have a list of, I would say, maybe things that are in the deficit that they take off of that undesignated fund balance. Just because they're taking it off your undesignated fund balance, they just reduce where your excess and deficiency is. Once you get that reimbursement in, it goes back. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you used E&D for those. And I think, and I think that's where everybody's getting completely confused.
Yeah.
Because they see that list and they see like Ezra Baker, like 139. That just means that you did the project, but you didn't get the reimbursement from Dennis yet. And so then they hit the E&D. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's what that's.
So that it goes back
I
in.
wanted to explain it that way just because.
Yeah, or that those costs were held separately. So actually, I think it's actually kind of the opposite of the way you're describing it. So like we got those funds, but we had actually outlaid those funds as a district in the previous year. So they're actually held in a separate cap. So they came in as a revenue, but they were actually charged to a separate capital outlay fund, which was because we have separate capital outlay accounts that
Right.
we designate for when Yarmouth gives us funds for Yarmouth specific projects.
Separate fund, that's
Yeah.
why, yes.
So in the case, well, you know, because we were involved with Yarmouth with
Right,
some of these,
exactly.
and we were involved with Dennis with some.
Right.
Dr. Gilson found that, going back to your earlier question about cleaning up some stuff around accounting practices. So we have had multiple years of both in the town of Yarmouth and in the town of Dennis where projects had been approved through town meeting for capital work.
Going through the capital.
Through the
process
capital
Each
process, yep.
town, right?
Yep. So I can think in Yarmouth, floors at Station Avenue, roofing work at ME Small. I could come up with other examples. Well, they're on this list.
Let's,
Yeah. And we did the work,
Right.
but we never went to the towns
Right.
and said, we did the work. Here's the receipt for the fund.
Exactly. And we.
Please transfer the fund
Exactly.
from the town to the school district.
Right.
Dr. Gilson, since coming on board, has gone through the legwork, going back in a lot of cases, like a couple of fiscal years ago,
Right.
to dig up the receipts and submit them and get the funds. So this is showing those revenues coming into the district, but so we have to show, when we show it to the Department of Revenue, we have to show the revenues coming in, but they're not part of our general fund revenues because they're going us back to the capital accounts that they belong in. So they're showing at the very top all the revenues and deficient, this is showing at the end of the year, how much money did you spend? How much money did you, how much money did you receive? How much money did you spend? That's this number at the top. And then all these other things are, did they belong, like some stuff in here is like your student activities accounts, right? That's not general fund revenues. That's stuff that came into, when kids fundraise for their account for the freshman class or whatever. So all that stuff then gets parsed out by the Department of Revenue. And then at the very end, they say, okay, so then how much is actual general fund excess and deficiency revenue? That's the bottom line number, which in this was 2.7, but what ended up happening is the Department of Revenue made a mistake.
Yeah, I saw.
They
that.
duplicated,
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
they
they did.
duplicated
Yeah.
some of the Ezra Baker stuff. They put it on, or the dentist stuff, they put on there twice. So they actually deducted some stuff twice. Dr. Gilson caught it, has been communicating with them. It was an error on the Department of Revenue side because we do the stuff. We send it through our auditor double checks it and then sends it up to the Department of Revenue. They produce that form and something got messed up in their system because we had anticipated 3.2 million. And we had communicated that we thought it was going to, so when it came in at 2.8, I was a little surprised, but I was like, okay, so whatever, we bad estimating on our part. But they corrected it and they just sent one out today with their corrected information. So
next year, what will happen, because you're working on cleaning up those accounts, like what would happen in the town, and you'll see it with our free cash, we'll have balances, like this will be our certified free cash, and then they hit you for it, they take it off. And a lot of times it can be a reimbursable grant, which you would get. And so what will happen with us is that we might have a large expenditure in June. And then what we do is we'll apply to like the state to get the reimbursement, because that's how the grant's written. You need to spend, then you get the money back. And it's interesting because DOR is certifying your free cash, but then you're saying, well, we're waiting for money to come in from the state. And they're like, we don't care, we're still gonna hit you for it. Now, they don't reduce your undesignated fund balance. It's not like you just can't spend up to that.
yeah,
And then as that revenue comes in, or as is Dennis will give you the money for Ezra Baker, that comes off, and then you'll have more to spend next year. So your E&D will be higher next year. It's just that what they're saying is this year, we're not going to certify this because we're waiting for you to get this revenue in.
But one thing I will tell you is that past years, the money we had a generalized account for
Oh, I
Yarmouth
see.
Capital and Dennis Capital. Okay, and what DOR was pressing for us to do
Okay.
was to actually identify the specific projects.
Okay.
Because they were looking
No, I
to
get
a
it.
match. And so that's where we had to move each year. And that was based on like a continued finding.
That was in your,
Yes,
yeah,
that
I
was-
understand that, yeah.
And nobody had exercised, like, this was a little extra.
Okay,
work
yeah,
to
no.
Balance.
So what would happen is, and I want to maybe try to do it in layman's terms. So what
Yeah,
happens is,
okay.
like, you have fund accounting, you have your general fund, and then you have your grant funds, and you have all these other funds, right? And so what they used to do is they would put everything in one fund, and then they would submit that to DOR, so it looks like it has a positive balance. But then when you break down the fund into the individual projects, they might have negative balances, and it's just timing issues because we haven't given them a reimbursement yet. And so in their audit, they're like, no, you need to break these down into individual. And so this is your first year that
You're
you
doing
broke them down.
Yes.
And then you can identify, okay, we need to get money in for Dennis for Ezra Baker. We need to submit, the receipts to get the money in for this. And so that's like a perfect storm, if you will. So
Yeah.
I think people got confused because they're like, why are they using E&D? But it doesn't mean you use E&D. They're just hitting their E&D because the money, it's a timing issue, hasn't come in yet for the reimbursement of.
So at the end of the day, we're going to go back up to the 4.2 then. I mean, these are all timing issues then.
Next year,
It's already certified at,
Yeah, I'm saying
as of today,
As
at
of
3.2.
2.
And the duplicated, the late, yeah.
So let me answer Richard's question.
Okay.
So what will happen next year is when they go to close their books, the revenue goes in and then the expenses go in. And it's a whole calculation. So the undesignated fund balance will change. They won't get hit for those, but their undesignated fund balance might go down. So they
Right.
can't really tell you, oh yeah, it's going up to 4.2.
No, it's just-
It could go down because that undesignated fund balance, but you won't get hit for those because they're auditing them and they'll get the revenue in, right?
Is that clear to everybody?
And the school committees approved 1.3 million in excess and deficiency spending to
To
this
bring
year.
that down, yeah.
Yeah, and to help, quite frankly, keep the budget from being 1.3 million. There's, I think to an earlier question, there are capital projects that were originally in the operating budget that got pulled out and are now being paid out of E&D. There's curriculum purchase, which would normally be in the operating budget, got pulled out and is being funded out of E&D. And what's the third item?
It was, so the curriculum.
Oh, and purchase of technology,
Yeah, right.
again, all being funded strategically through an E&D so that to not hit the operating budget.
And those are
So
certainly,
you're often kind of behind because of the lack of the timing of the reimbursement. In other words, you do a capital improvement, you go to Yarmouth and you go to Dennis and get reimbursed for whatever those expenses are.
Yeah, I mean, every year there's a difference between the unreserved designated fund and then what ultimately ends up being the certified number, because there's always, we're holding, you look on here, there's other items, right? There's
Yeah.
title, we have either uncaptured money from the federal or really from the state
Yeah.
through the feds or the feds through the state, for grant funds. So there's always something that we're either carrying over to the next year. Yeah.
And let me just say with Dennis and Yarmouth, so what we do is we require them to spend the money first before we give them the money.
Yeah.
So say they go through
Yeah.
our capital program and
Yeah.
they're spending something at ME Small, right? And
Yeah.
we're paying for it. So we require them, okay, go do your project, right? And they do, and so it's in a different fund. So they're spending the money, so it puts it in a negative balance. Then they submit all the receipts to us, and as soon as we get all that documentation, then we'll send them a check. So that's the issue.
Increase deficit spending.
I'm sure it's a fast
Yeah.
process.
We spent it before they got it.
Yeah. And it's always ACH. Yeah. We're never chasing Yarmouth for money.
Sounds like a credit card.
Raphael, you have your hand up.
Chasing the VIG.
Yes, sir. You're muted.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know me well as I'm writing and talking into my notebook. What's the total number of schools under the regional school district charter?
Yeah, 6 schools, 5 buildings. But I mean, we have some other outbuildings, but for schools, it's 5 buildings, 6 schools.
6 schools, 5 buildings, and plus minus how many students total, please?
Give or take 3,000. We're just under 3,000.
Thank you.
29, I think it is right now. 29. Well, it's a little more than 2,900, but
So that, yeah, roughly there's I think, 1,100 in the high school building, 1,000 at the intermediate middle school, and then the other 1,000 is,
400.
right, is divided among the 3 elementary schools.
And Jennifer, not to wind you up again, but how much, just out of curiosity, how much do we have in free cash right now?
Right now, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay.
We were certified at a little over 8 million, I think. And then we went to November town meeting, spent some, and then we have our capital.
Right,
Thank
and
you.
we'll get a snow and ice bill.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. So I think that, does anybody else have any other questions about the E&D? So the last one is just sort of a quick snapshot of the E&D plus the capital stabilization fund, just sort of trend lines. And I think sort of what's interesting is back prior to 2020, the school district was operating in a fiscally tenuous position, not having enough reserves. So I thought it would be useful just to, so the district is now in a much more, and again, we talked about this, I think sort of in our own committee, being fiscally responsible, not leaving yourself so that you can't do your jobs. So, but it has gone up quite a bit. And so I just, thoughts on, what's been driving it, and is it going to continue to be moving in that direction?
So, a couple of things. One, over the last couple of years, it's been the E&D in particular has been driven by last year was all right, let me back up. So since I've been here, a lot of it's been driven by unanticipated revenue, right? So unbudgeted revenue on the solar fields, which we've now included in offsets for the between the budget and the assessment. We've had
As a local revenue.
Is a local revenue.
Yeah.
Yep. Our nursing director has been a hawk. I don't know what the right Bulldog. There's a better one. I like that one on chasing Medicaid reimbursement. So we've seen steady increase in the Medicaid reimbursement, which has out predicted our estimates for Medicaid. And then we did really well on, when the interest rates were really high, we did really well on investment returns. So over that 3-year period, we saw a fair higher than anticipated investment returns. Revenue returns. And then last year, you combine that with when David left and John came on, shortly after John came on, we put a freeze on the budget for anything other than salaries. So we continue to pay people, but we stopped spending. Obviously we paid our electricity and paid our heat, but any other expenditures, anybody wanted to order a supply, the answer was no. All facilities projects stopped, everything stopped. And that left us with a surplus, which we've always sort of spent down to the last, our expenditure, we haven't had anything like whenever we've sort of had E&D at the end of the year, it's been because of revenue, not because because on the expenditure side, right? So in this case, we sort of stopped moving some of our work forward because I really didn't know where things were, and definitely didn't want to end up in the red. And so that combined to a fair amount last year in particular, moving into E&D. And then the district, we have a strategic plan that includes wanting to take care of our facilities. And so with the committee and I have worked to try to figure out a way to fund that. Some of that we can do through capital stabilization, having our own way to access those things. And then some of that we're gonna have to work with the two towns in order to address. But I not, I pay attention. I know both towns are dealing with a whole bunch of other projects. And if we sit and wait for both towns to be able to say yes, and then try to get, especially for district projects, right? To get both towns to agree in the same year that they want to move forward on something is, let's just call it challenging. So to have a capital stabilization fund that we can access to move forward on some projects, the committee and I felt like it was strategic, and then starting to think about how to build that up and then use that in a way, so now where we're working on now is fiscal policy around investing in that. So can that fund now create enough of its own revenue to be able to start to apply to projects that apply to district properties and start to move some of those things forward, and then work with the two towns respectively on the elementary.
And so I want to underline that. So this is only for district-wide, not for town schools specifically, not the elementary schools. So it's clear.
Explain to me, Doctor, what, the Medicaid, where does that go?
Yes, so we
Medicare.
Yeah, so we have, there's a wide variety of services that we provide that are Medicaid reimbursable. So like a lot of our nursing services, physical therapy services, occupational therapy services,
Pathology.
speech pathology, some of our psychological services are all Medicaid eligible for reimbursement, but you have to chase it. You have to be willing to do, and every year they make the paperwork a little bit more complicated, but our nursing director is very diligent. And so she does the work, and as a result, we get the reimbursement.
But on the finance side of it too, we have a lot of paperwork. We have to complete quarterly inventories, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? We have to submit it. So.
They're like hundreds of thousands of dollars or?
Last year was somewhere in the $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again,
We
now we
it.
offset.
That's an
Yeah,
offset.
it's a revenue.
Well, and you mentioned the solar, so that was not being budgeted at all or budgeted correctly prior?
Well, no, it's just come into play in the last 2 or 3 years, right?
No, I think it's been there.
Okay.
Again, I don't have the history, so
Yeah, so.
yeah, but it was not being used as a local revenue consistently.
So are there any additional questions? Because again, the whole objective is to give the committee all the information that we would need to have a vote tonight. So I just want to make sure that there is no unanswered questions. I hear none. So with that as a backdrop, Article 8. Article 8 is the motion or the article that would fund the district and would necessitate a 1.481 roughly override. 13, which I think Jennifer provided us with last week, which would be the equivalent of 13 cent per thousand number. Do I hear a motion from the floor? And you could do one of three motions. Motion to recommend. Or a motion to recommend or a motion to defer until town meeting. Either those would be your options. Even if you vote to recommend, you would vote no if you did not want to recommend. So do I hear a motion from the floor?
I'll move it.
Okay. Mr. Anderson? A second from Mr. Perkins. Is there any additional discussion? So again, a vote So the vote is on the floor to recommend. A no vote would be would say that we do not recommend. A yes vote, we do recommend. And who wants to go first on a roll call vote? I don't want to put anybody on.
I mean, can I just make a general comment first?
Yep.
So, I've been thinking about this quite like everybody else quite a while. And schools are very near and dear to my heart, particularly special ed, just for personal reasons. The challenge well, not challenge, the concern I have is like, where does this stop? Right? Because of, so much is out of your guys' hands, right? As leadership in the school and requirements and state and federal and all of that. So I just, I wish you luck with an accountant and, it sounds like you've made significant progress in cleaning up what you inherited. And, I'm hopeful that next year will be even better. And because, it's nothing more important than education and educating kids. So.
Dr. Smith.
Through the chair.
Yep.
Yeah, the only comment I would say to that is, the reason we find ourselves looking at an override is not because the school district is facing some pressure and some cost that nobody else is facing.
Yeah.
The reason we're facing an override is because of a policy of the select board. The select board has a policy that says anything over 2.5% of an assessment must go to override. But if you look at the cost increase on the town, the operating budget of the town is greater than a 2.5, but we're not seeking override there. So the reason we're seeking override is due to policy. So I just want to be clear on the reason we're going to override is policy driven, not, and I can, again, look at all the school costs across the region. We're not outpacing those costs. And we're not even really outpacing the costs of town. You look at our neighbor across the street. I know what their, across the river, I know what their municipal costs are going up by. I've been saying this all along. We're all facing the same cost drivers. We all have the same health insurance costs. We all have the same staffing cost increase. We all have the same inflationary pressures when it comes to heating their buildings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? The reason we're looking at an override is due to a policy decision.
Thank you for that. So John, you have made the motion.
Yep.
So I'm assuming I will let you record your vote.
I'm a yay.
Aye, Alyssa.
All right.
Right.
Mr. Harding.
Yeah, I think I learned a lot. And I think the real problem, and it's like John said, I find it amazing that you have to put up with all this crap in terms of these budgets. And I've been around finance all my life. It's a head scratcher, and it's just so confusing. And I think the general public, I think it's really difficult for them.
Right. So
Nonetheless,
again, that's where our vote and our voice can help inform the conversation.
yeah. So I think that's really important. It's like John said, where does this end? I was on the school building committee 15 years ago at DY, and these same issues were brought up back then. And, there's just a level of frustration out there. I know you already know this, but there's a level of frustration. It has a lot to do with just confusion. Nothing about your capabilities or how good of a job you do. It's just everything, it's just so many moving parts. It's just mind-boggling. It's like Raphael said, he's a smart guy and he has a hard time trying to figure it out. So it's a yay vote.
Did I capture everybody? I'm an ayes only.
No,
Nope.
I'm an A.
Thank you. I'm going to say yay, but I do expect, because I do expect to gain additional information, and I look forward to continuing to work closely with you guys because I think that is going to be very helpful. And I'm specifically hoping to get some of the Q3 data because I'm sort of that person too.
Yeah, we'll continue to report it to the school committee and
Yeah, I
that's
can share that.
publicly available information.
Thank you. That concludes the consideration of Article 3, Article 8. Our last item is Article 15. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Doctor, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your patience and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Joke.
I have my rosary with me if you want.
I need a flak jacket. One of those.
The library construction project. Alyssa and I, for purposes of the appearance of a potential conflict of interest, will recuse ourselves from this. Because I also serve as the assistant treasurer on the Friends Group. Alyssa has a family member who is employed part-time part-time?
Yes, very part-time, but
Yeah.
on payroll.
On payroll. So again, felt uncomfortable voting on this because of that potential or that possible appearance of a conflict of interest. So if you recall the bidding on this one from last week's meeting, I don't know if everybody had a chance to do it, but it was the data that was provided by the architect called for a total expenditure of 31 million. There was a discussion about whether or not it would be useful to add a placeholder for the solar, because if the request was increased, then solar would be covered 40% or 38% from by the MBLC. So there was that one consideration. But I think we're sort of locked into the number right now, unless there's going to be some late revisions. And that would require so the request will be for the full 35 or 31 million, and then there's 35 million. And then the MBLC grant would reduce that most likely to 21 million. And that's exclusive of any fundraising that would be done or existing funds that have already been assigned for this or potentially assigned to it, including a recent $200,000 estate gift to the library. So that's context. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask?
I want to make sure that I understand. If we vote to proceed, that's because that's required for the grant. That's correct?
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah, it's similar to the same process that you do. You always vote the gross.
And
Jennifer's coming back, so always vote the gross.
So here's my question. If the grant is denied, are we obligated to raise the funds and spend it?
The grant's already been approved.
Oh, it has?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So we'll be
Okay.
getting 38, I think it's 38%. Yeah, so the grant's approved. And actually, they kind of mirrored this on MSBA, so if you ever been through a school project, because MSBA gives you a
Right,
certain
right.
schools, this is mirrored the same way. I have to dig in. I've done schools before. I haven't done a library before. They said like in certain installments, but usually what you'll have is a cloud-based system where you enter your bills and then you send their bills. They have eligible costs, ineligible costs. And what they'll do is they'll pay you before you bond. See, in the old way, what they would do is like you'd do the project and you'd bond it out and you'd be paying principal and interest. Then they give you a reimbursement, but we're paying more for it. So they've changed that model. So what we'll do is we'll pay them and then we we bond the net, but under the rules, you have, and that's why you have that wording in there. In the article, it will say accept grants, but that we have been approved, but under all of these grants, you have to always, approve the gross.
How
The
much-
MSBA and the library.
How much is the grant for the library?
It's like 38%, 38 something
much is it?
percent, 38 something percent.
So it's about $14 million.
Did you get it was in the last week's
I'm
packet.
sorry I didn't get it. I apologize.
We would be bonding about 22 million.
Yeah.
And how much was the grant though? Just
38 is like 14, right? So 35 minus, like, I can't.
Sorry.
22, 32 is 10, so it's like 13, 14 million. Because it's 35 something and yeah,
And they predicted about 2 million in fundraising.
but that's not reflected
No.
in here.
Not
It's involved.
Yeah.
Apologize.
Yep.
I have a question. I know we got the answer to the lifespan of the building, which is 75 to 100 years. Did we get any other information? I know we had a lot of open questions after.
That was really the key one. I mean, that was Raphael's. Oh, the only other question was operating costs. And again, sort of the information that was provided is, Jennifer provided the schedule of the bond payments.
Mhm.
They don't have the operating, so you're looking at, if you open the library, you're gonna need new people. David said he wasn't sure. They just don't have the answers to that yet,
Okay.
just so you know,
I mean, every operating expense for the library is gonna dramatically increase. Right, I mean, it is, it's a bigger building. You can
Right.
talk about it being new and all that. It's
But it costs more.
It's I've done libraries, retail's my expertise. It's gonna cost more because of the size of the building.
And again, it's not, so what's going to be interesting about that, sort of the so the materials and circulation is probably one of the few fixed components. It's like you're not going to have, exponentially more books. It's just going to be used with a higher velocities, which is what I would think, because that's what we see. Libraries are delivering more services to more people every year.
What's the cost per square foot in a library? Any idea?
Yes, Nate.
Assuming we build a new library, what do we do with the old one? Are we stuck with it?
So that's another good question. I don't think there's no firm commitment because a little bit of it's a chicken and egg problem. As was stated last week, you can't offer it until you say that you're going to leave.
I mean,
So I asked that,
last we need is another Manikes.
Yeah,
I asked that same question.
right. Yeah, it's about 5,000 square feet, so it's a little bit different scale than,
5,000 square feet?
yeah.
A lot of money.
No, 5,000 square feet is the current library.
Oh, I thought you were thinking library's gonna, he's adding it up. I'm like,
No.
that's crazy.
So yeah, that's sort of the thing. Raphael, you did have your hand up, but you put it back down?
No, John answered the question. He and I, to Nate's concern, is that Nate, there is not an integrated plan of commissioning a new building, new staff, new operating costs, and shutting the others down. That's my biggest heartburn with this whole thing right here. And the answer of 75 years for a design life of a building, you know what? It insults everybody's intelligence. That's a ridiculous answer. And the fact that they've only baked in 6% escalation year over year, that's folly right there as well. So just, again, don't mean to be gloom and doom on everything. I'd love to have this facility, to love to see it commissioned and started up, but there's still lots of holes to poke through to fill on this thing, in my perspective.
How old is the library on 6A in Yarmouth for? It must be about 75 years
Yeah.
old.
And that's privately funded. I mean, that's
right. Yeah, that's right.
So that's been, again, sort of, there's a big model difference,
Favorite library.
right? So other questions? I know, George, you were at the Capital Budget Committee meeting related to this. Do you have
Correct.
any thoughts on this as well?
I see this as a valuable asset to the town. The services that will be rendered from this are far in excess of what the current facility is capable of providing. And if you live in a town, there are certain services you need. without this, and I'm not one who actually uses this library. I have access to university libraries, but there are things that can be done in a library that cannot be done anyplace else. So, currently people go to libraries to print things. They go to libraries to get access to the internet. They go to the libraries for all sorts of kinds of information and various sources. I think we are shooting ourselves in the foot if we're not prepared to undertake these expenses. Same with education. I sat here for an hour and listened to people going back and forth over accounting tricks as we discussed the school. Not once did we ask, how effective are we in educating schools? I know the agenda item was geared just to those things, but I wonder how much discussion in this entire process we focused on how well are we educating kids? Can they write? Can they think abstractly? And what is the measure to ensure that's happening? It's like we don't care. That's my frustration. It's out. There you go.
Thank you, George. Any other comments, or I will?
I mean, I would say, I agree with George of the value of a library, the importance of a library. However, we have way too much debt, in my opinion, as a town.
Exactly.
And we're taking on more. Next April, we're going to be going to the town for 30 million, 35 million for the Bayberry connection, right? We're going to be going to Emmy Small School, which I would argue is way more important than a library to the town. And we just, like, every meeting I'm in, I hear about affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing. And part of affordable housing is how much you pay in taxes. And we're just asking an awful lot of taxpayers right now. And if we had nothing else on the docket, I'd sign up for a new library tonight. It'd be a yay. But because of everything else we have going, I will be voting in the negative.
All right. I just want one comment. John, you come back to taxes. This is the same, I realize this is at the federal level, but we just gave away $2 trillion in tax revenue through the tax cuts that were passed as the Revenue Act of 2017 was extended. Do we care about that? What impact is that going to have? The Prop 2.5. Yeah, the superintendent was absolutely right. That's an arbitrary number. So are we suggesting if inflation exceeds, or for some reason expenses that are necessary to produce town services exceed 2.5%, we should cut services and not raise taxes? The question is, we're not taxing the right people. We're not taxing the right sources. We just tax property. Yeah, that makes it hard for people. But we could be taxing income at rates that are other than a flat rate. That we changed that last year. And we could be taxing wealth, which we never touch. So I think the question, you're absolutely right, John. This is going to put a heavy burden on the town. But unfortunately, there were some other people we gave huge tax breaks to. And by the way, we keep making those tax loopholes larger when the municipality includes these TIF districts, which essentially say, look, that becomes capital gains. Well, but we just essentially lowered the capital gains rate. So I've said my piece.
I just have a comment. I'm not voting on this, but I do fear if we are not investing in our facilities now, we will lose people in the town that are contributing to our tax base. We are behind every other town on the Cape, like in this radius with the facilities we have. We don't have anything to offer in terms of recreation or library services that can compete. So I just urge the committee to think this opportunity. It will come up again, but we will not have the grant. It is unlikely that we will have the grant to fund this. So I just urge the committee to think about that.
Think of what would have happened had we did the sewers in 2011.
Don't go there. Yeah, so that's the other thing. So I know that there is going to be volunteer money coming along. At some point, this is going to go on the ballot anyway. So at the end of the day, our recommendation is ultimately going to sway some voters, but it's going to come up to them as the requirement. And again, I will be recusing myself from this vote. So at this point, unless there is other discussion, Nate.
I've got the feeling that personally, that the 1.48 isn't going to pass the schools. And it's going to give an adverse feeling to everybody if you have this also come up.
It's going to come up. It's on the ballot. I mean, it's on the docket. It's not coming off, I don't think, unless the select board, because the select board votes on, has set the warrant, and I expect this will be on the warrant. So really, it's our recommendation.
Yeah.
That is part of the conversation for tonight. So
Make a motion to conclude the meeting.
you want to vote this on town floor?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're out of order.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm always on them.
So,
I make a motion to recommend.
thank you. And again, a motion to
Second.
recommend is simply the opportunity to vote.
Right.
George?
What's the vote again?
Yeah, we're voting on the article, right?
Right.
Right.
20.
So, yeah. So this again will require a roll call vote. A vote no will be you do not recommend. A vote yes is you do recommend. I'll start with George since he likes to be first.
Aye.
John?
Nay.
Nate?
Nay.
John? Bob?
Nay.
Raphael?
No, nay.
We will reflect in the vote a 1-4-2 vote on this particular article. And that concludes our discussion and votes on the warrant article. There is one set of minutes in your packet, the minutes of last week's meeting about the library. So as well as the votes on the other articles. There's a couple of minor name spellings and other things because there were a lot of people there that I need to fix. So there will be some minor amendments, but are there any other questions or suggested amendments to the meeting minutes? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 11th as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Alyssa?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Raphael?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. My next task is going to be drafting the committee report to reflect the votes that we took tonight. So that's my next thing. I'll try to get some preliminary things out to you. Our next scheduled finance committee meeting would be April 28th, 2026, which would be the the 5 o'clock meeting for, in advance of town meeting. However, if it's not, if the committee would indulge me, we will have 3 sets of minutes that we could quickly dispose of if you'd be willing to attend a very short, maybe Zoom meeting. Could we do that on Zoom?
If somebody can manage the Zoom meeting, I really don't have it in my calendar to work
Right.
another Wednesday night.
Yeah. Well, I'm not
I think
even,
we could do it the night of town meeting,
You
then just
could,
3 sets of
yeah.
meeting minutes.
any interest? We'll just do it at town meeting. Okay.
Yep.
That's, I think, the end of tonight's wonderful session. I thank everybody for attending and look forward to a very interesting town meeting. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Alyssa,
Aye.
Nate,
Um,
George,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Don,
I,
Bob, and I as well. Carry 7-0 at 7.
13 cents a thousand
Thank you.
average.
Thank you, and thank you.
So-
Night all.